everyone. Welcome back to Tangawizi Podcast. We are here once again for our timeless, youthful conversation. And we are still at this identity across the lifespan topic. We are hoping to unpack it from another dimension today, just looking at how, in quest of our Afrocentricity, how do we present? How does our identity get influenced? And how does that impact us and the communities that we live in? I'm still your host, Caroline Momanyi, and I'm looking forward for a lovely interaction.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Drusilla Ogola. I'm the co-host for Tangawizi Podcast. Such an exciting episode, this one. And we're just excited to be joined by our wonderful guest. I'll just invite her to introduce herself.
All right. My name is Dikeledi. I am a lecturer at the university in South Africa called the University of Johannesburg.
Wow.
I think she forgot to say Dr. Dikeledi. It's important.
It's very important
to me.
I
Do you identify yourself as a doctor?
It depends. If I'm with my children, it does not matter whether I identify or not.
Okay.
But I think also it's actually because now that brings in an identity question,
Yeah.
right? So what does becoming a doctor actually mean? And when I completed my PhD, I assumed that you'd start feeling different.
You're waiting for that special air.
like what's the R? No, nothing. And then when you walk with them, I'd be like special effects on the background. Nothing like that. Nothing changes. And I think it's quite important, especially in the context where I've heard people say, "Oh, you're a doctor." Okay, I'll give you an example. I was at the bank not too long ago, and the cashier was like, "Oh, you're a doctor." She's like, "Yo, but you do not make me feel that you're a doctor." She's like, other customers when they arrive, you will know.
No.
You will know. And I was like, oh, but it goes back to how we were also raised. All right. So there's a sense of ubuntu buto, humanity. There's certain philosophies that they do transcend whatever class status that you may acquire. Right. So it's like humility. If you are socialized into having humility, irrespective of where you are in life, whether you be it a president, be it Deputy Jesus, I mean, even Jesus himself, right? And many prophets that we know about have been the most humble people, So in a sense, class mobility does not strip away your sense of who you are and how also you're taught to actually engage with other people. So now that goes back to the idea of, how then do we perceive ourselves in relation to everyone? So there's this thing in our continent. In South Africa, we call it Ubuntu, as I've mentioned earlier. And Ubuntu loosely translates as I am because you are. So, there's no way that my existence could have any meaning or have sense without my understanding that I'm an extension of you and you're an extension of myself as well. So there's this that I need to be able to see myself in you, right? And of course, whether Ubuntu is a salient philosophy that we all live by consistently, so I think that's quite questionable.
Yeah.
Especially for our continent, because now Ubuntu, as a, sort of, it's like we call it generally African philosophy. And it's supposed to be transcending every aspect of our existence. It's supposed to influence how we behave politically, how we behave, or the decisions that we make economically, how we organize ourselves. And now just to go back on the economic aspect, right? So if you're then thinking about this notion of I am because you are, there is no way that in any economic decision that you would make, you'd make decisions that would have implications that cause depravity and poverty for other people and wealth, extreme wealth for others.
But then is that an African value?
Do we practice it? The idea.
Because here we are looking at identity in the quest for Afrocentricity.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it means we must lean into some of the African values.
We should, yes.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be an African value.
So if it is an African value, then we have some work to do.
Where did we
have a
drop
lot of
it?
work.
That's the question. Yeah.
Ooh, why did we drop it?
Yeah.
I mean, in the quest for identity, I think that's where we dropped it. Because probably we were looking at attaching ourselves to elements of identity where we have or we experience gain or privilege.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's very
certainly.
heavy in Kenya. That message, that first one was ours.
Not just in Kenya, I think everywhere. It's literally like it's unfortunate that we have. It's basically a globalization of a neoliberal culture, what we call it. And so there's this scholar whose name David Harvey is a scholar of Marx. So in his work, so there's a concept that he brings, or rather he explains neoliberalism as an ethic, right? So it influences your behavior. And how this has manifested, I'll give you an example in the context of South Africa, and I think surely, possibly young people also identify with this. So neoliberalism in South Africa, what it has done in so many of our communities is it has stripped us away from our values and our African cultures. So, for instance, I know when I was younger, very younger, and including many other communities in SA, say, for instance, there is a funeral, right? And all the community members would come in, contribute some food, for that to happen. And then another example is, I remember very young, or maybe let me use a not so dark example, but also like, when you were younger, so we'd be able to, for instance, visit my grandmother, and you'd have all the cousins there. We'd spend holidays at my grandmother's house. But how, for some reason, with the economic policies that have been made in South Africa, so we've been seeing literally a decline of that, not necessarily because people don't want to spend time with each other anymore, but it's become expensive. You see, so your grandmother's house no longer affords to feed all of these children who are staying there, right? So now there's this sense of growing together as cousins, right? I mean, of course, the idea of cousin is even foreign to us as Africans. It is your brothers and your sisters.
Yeah.
So growing together with your brothers and sisters is no longer financially feasible, unless if, the parents are bringing in their children and you send money as well. And now when you think about, again, some of the socioeconomic challenges that many families are facing today, so it becomes quite difficult, right?
But also not just the challenges then, also, how you've experienced life in your younger years. Let's say you had abject poverty, and as you're coming out of that and getting into financial freedom, you tend to tie those very valuable lessons that would have kept you closer to your family, closer to access the kind of values that would inform your identity as per your African side. But now when you think about, let's say, when it comes to something nice as a wedding also, and people would make contributions, and there was never an element of how much you had to give. It was just you gave, that it was communal, that we were going to enjoy this together, that it was our celebration. But because of how you went through abject poverty, then you faced this liberation, I don't know where it's coming from. And now you are tying those experiences and those practices to, no, I don't want people up in my business. What does that even mean? How can we celebrate you?
No, I feel like it's trauma, guys. It's perhaps trauma, such that you're not able to carry the blessing out of how you are raised. So you're carrying all the negative experiences that you got, and the blessing is hidden, right? And now you're coping by secluding yourself and thinking, now this is how rich people live. Secluding yourself, living in individualism, and it's crazy that today a lot of people are craving a lot of community, and they're trying to build communities around themselves through interesting and different ways. But then again, it's very rooted from where they're coming from, whereby they used to live together, be together. Actually, my mother would call our uncles my brothers and sisters, but I call my cousins cousin. Right? Yeah. So, and we never really understood that, this is my brother. Like, okay, you're being weird. That's your cousin. Yeah, but clearly, as you spoke, I figured, there's something that clicked then for them that doesn't perhaps click for us.
I think it's Europeanization. Remember, I think we got the so when our parents, some of them may have, however means that they were able to take us to school, and be exposed to the kind of education that we've got. So the more educated we became, the more Europeanized, also in our thinking. That's essentially what it is.
I think it's important for you to highlight that is also a culture, because we also need to bring people back to realizing that European is a culture as well.
It is a culture, yes. Yes, it is a culture.
Yeah.
So it goes back, when you're talking about that, so it's like when people say, I'm having a white wedding and a traditional wedding. But no. It is a traditional wedding in the West. Okay? So you're having two traditional weddings.
Yeah.
But historically, because of colonization.
You're hurting me.
To a white wedding and traditional wedding.
It almost broke the family apart. Seriously, yeah. Even the choice of attire. I was at the height of my Pan-Africanism awakening. I don't want to do that stuff, and I wanted a whole fabric-looking, explaining that to my mother-in-law, that this is my preferred dress. No. The wedding almost didn't happen, and I was told, so you can have the traditional one, do your thing, and then you can have the white wedding.
No, but why do people act like the traditional wedding is not a wedding? That you're now married when you've actually done a white wedding?
Again, it goes back to Westernization and neoliberalism, which you meant, right? Neoliberalism, when I guess we loosely translated, would be the sense of individualist notion, I guess on a social aspect. Of course, economically, means something slightly different. That's a market-centered approach where everything is subject to the market. Yeah. So now when we go back to that idea around, the neoliberal ethic. So what we're witnessing that in a lot of our clubs, when young people go partying, I don't know what the culture here is in Kenya, but in South Africa, there's this phenomena that is growing that, say, the three of us go out partying, and there are two brothers over there or three brothers, whoever, and they buy us drinks, yeah? And of course, naturally, we'd all sit together. But now them buying drinks is actually, there's an expectation that at the end of the night, you are going to home with me, and then we are going to engage in, politics of the...
Those are our brothers.
Adult politics,
right?
Like, what happens to just...
Dikeledi, they are related. They are the same.
The context are the same.
Same thing.
Wow.
Very related.
It heightens the sense of ownership.
Exactly, because now it means, so unlike before, whereby I'm doing this out of the goodness of my heart, I'm giving, but there is an expectation. So it means everything is subject to trade. So it means now our engagement here, as opposed to building friendship, it's actually an economic activity, whereby I expect at the end of the night, you must go home with me or I go home with you, and then the payment is in the form of adult politics, yeah?
Yeah.
So it is a neoliberal ethic. It is basically what. So it makes, we've reduced everything to something that is tradable. That's something that we can sell, that we can buy. So even friendships at that level, so it's a culture that has permeated everywhere.
And it's affecting even the topic that we have at hand, because we are saying in the quest for identity, in the quest for Afrocentricity. And it actually fits that, because now we have an awakening. We can't really tell the motivation as is it that people really want to understand where they came from, what values their people had, and how they must now show up. But then what you're seeing is because the world has become a global village, so there's pressure. You can't show up with an American accent. I mean, if they've been paying your salary, it's good. You must confirm. Then you show up with a British one because of, your colonial experiences.
Yeah.
But there's pressure of, as I show up as Caroline, what culture am I bringing? And then because of that, I'm a Pan-Africanist. Yeah. But have I unpacked? What does that even mean? Right? What does me being an African? I mean, in the current space, I found myself as Ogake Momanyi, dropping the Caroline. you know, and really having a few quotes about what Patrice Lumumba said and Sankara and you know, aligning to that. But then, does that even make me African?
That is quite interesting. Yeah, it is quite interesting. I think it goes back to, so there's this South African lecturer, she's a professor now, Professor Takata. So she says, based on her work, the research that she did on the Amaxhosa in South Africa, says when the Amaxhosas give names to their children, it's like they are creating theoretical frameworks for their children's lives. So essentially what that means is you are, you know, it's like you're sending out prayers. And of course, this is not unique to the Amaxhosa as well. I think every single parent, or at least I believe most of our parents, when they named us, it was more of a prayer for your life in terms of what you become and where you go in the future, right? But more so as people who are integrated as community members, as citizens. So I think that also then would that have implication on, so now what are your contributions to your community and also your nation as well? And when we go back to embracing our own African names, you know, so we reclaiming what colonization took away from us. So of course, you know, when you want the English accent and the British accent, exactly, that's the salary accent, right? So it was engagement, of course, of access and economic access. But Africa is at a point whereby things are shifting. So things are shifting. Of course, we're not where we're supposed to be economically, in relation to the global economy, but there is a shift. It's like Africa is regaining its agency. Look at what the Gen Z, what they were saying. There's that thing of saying, there's one statement that perhaps I will not be able to quote perfectly, but when they were reprimanding also foreign interest, and they were like, we were aware of this. So that means, so here's an agency that has been reclaimed, but also this is happening in the context where there's a huge shift in terms of where Africa is. And then possibly where it is going in the future. And I think when of course, whatever African names that our parents, our grandparents are giving us, or whoever, so I think those, the idea is they should, help us create a network of people who then redefine what Africa actually is. And the redefinition should be one of independence, one of pride, one of moving away from believing that anything is only possible through Massa.
And Massa being?
Massa being, of course, our donors, the former colonizers.
Protect our international relations also while you're at it. But taking you back a little, I like that it was very African to be intentional about how you name or the name you gave.
You gave your kid.
Because also there are other forces that have come thereafter from other cultures that, those that affiliate to the religious groups would say there's something in a name.
Yes.
And that's what they would say. But because, again, there's another religiosity awakening that is happening, you are not able to tie it again to say, even in the African spirituality, it was very intentional. Like, you didn't just wake up as Ogake. And even as you're seated here, have you even thought about, okay, what does this name mean? How am I living
to,
in alignment with this name?
Yeah.
Why are you looking at me funny? Because
how are you living in alignment to that name?
Let's see. So I'm named after my maternal grandmother. And my name literally means the small one. Yeah? Please don't ask me about my height. I have a feeling that you're unpacking spheres of self.
For those
I didn't even, guys.
Put in context, we gave her a pillow to support.
So I am the small one, and indeed I was the last one, I'm a last born, I don't know whether my maternal grandmother was, and it's homework for me to find out as I continue to find this intentionality of this name. Am I small in things, or how do I show up small? Maybe I am small in declining oppression. I show smallness in declining colorism, poverty. I mean, it's how you look at it. Yeah. But I would like to know, what does Dikeledi mean? Appeal.
I think perhaps she also is like this fierce, amazing woman who's going to influence the world. I think that's what she did.
That it doesn't matter the size.
Yes. They always
I
say
like
dynamites.
that.
Yeah,
Oh,
dynamites
yeah.
come in what?
I mean,
You have been
grenades
a
are in
dynamite?
small guy.
I think you're really reaching.
I have found myself.
Man, I think, and the other beautiful part is it's not only about, about the future, but also connecting you to your past. Because now this name comes from other people as well that came before you, your ancestors.
Correct.
Right? And your ancestors, whatever achievements that they have had. So I'll give you my name, right? So mine, in a sense, it ties me to a community of Africans in other countries. So it's able to link my lineage, of course, like for instance, Bakwena. So Mokwena is Sokwena, right? So it, of course, originates in Botswana, actually, right? So it was a kingdom, and then of course, when the king dies, when the leader dies and the children are left, and you had one was female, and then one was male. So, and of course, then there was a conversation about who then actually takes over the leadership and the throne. And the elder one and of course, Gwena was the male, and of course, patriarchy was trying to, but in a sense, the children split, went their different ways. So you had Gwenas who then migrated into various parts, like further down south. So you find Bagwena in, South Africa. You then find Bagwena in Lesotho, but actually Lesotho is the kingdom of Bagwema. Yes, it is. So we also find, I don't know those who've been to, so we have a national park in South Africa, which is named by a colonizer. So I'm not going to grace the colonizer by naming it. But so that particular national park, you had our people, really, in fact, my own ancestors who owned the part of that, yes. But so you see now so in South Africa with the land question, the landlessness and dispossession. So now this is able to, what it did was able to say, oh, okay, actually this is where we come from, this is a part of us, this is where we used to be. And of course, dispossession happened. And there is a court case currently, that's been sort of roaming for a number of years, trying to reclaim, that land. So in a sense, so you see, I mean, this is stuff that happened in the 1800s, really long time ago. But I'm then able to see, just on the name, right, my surname, where originally I come from. So which then, brings up this thing of, most of us are relatively Pan-African in origin. So it also brings us to this idea of when somebody tries to lock you into, you are only a Kikuyu, you are only a Muzulu, you are only this. But really, when we trace who we are and where we come from, then you realize I'm not just a South African. I'm not just how I'm classified in South Africa as Mosotho, but actually when we go back, you see all the other ethnic groups that actually makes up part of my identity, all right? So in a sense, then that then hopefully when you are aware of that, then you get to see that all these colonially enforced ethnic divisions, yeah? And I'm saying, of course, this does not mean that ethnic identities or national identities among Africans never existed before. They have existed. But for them to become instruments of violence, instruments of exclusion, instruments of discrimination, I think that's where, of course, colonization did play a role. I mean, we see it vividly in, for example, Rwanda, right, between the Tutsis and the Hutus, right? Yeah. So, and this, of course, has been a colonial model, British colonial model of divide and conquer, relatively everywhere throughout the world. So, in a sense, but then when we go back and realize that actually my identity is spanning across so many, so many borders, so many ethnic, so when you want to lock me into a specific identity and then want to rile me up into saying, no. So when I'm in government, I'm just going to give my
Mokwena's.
opportunities. But whereas actually if I look back at where I come from, then my other ancestors would be like, and then in Tony, what is this?
Where are we?
Where are we? Right? So you don't do that. So in a sense of, and again, just reminding us that we are one people. Yeah. We really are one people.
And I like that because even the political class is coming to really work very much hand in hand with the colonizer. Because even then they're telling us, we have to ethnically collect, which is fine. I must understand where my ethnicity is and how many we are, but that should not be the thing.
Yeah, should not be an instrument of exclusion, oppression, or marginalization.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But how about you focus on our interconnectedness? Other than you are this much, you will be excluded. You will never get to this levels of influence, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, so it even speaks to the current situation.
No, it really does.
Yeah,
It really
yeah.
does. It goes back to also how women were named.
Wait. Before we get there, let's hear this one.
I feel a lot of pressure because I know nothing.
Which is why we are talking about it today.
I'm so inspired by your sharing, just dating it back and just how interconnected it is. So when I think of the names I was given, right? My first name is Dosila. So that one I was named after my grandmother. Why I was named Dosila or why she's even named Dosila, I have no idea. But the energy I got is like my dad really loved the mom, so it was just a great reminder for him, right? Yeah. Then Apio normally comes in twos, so it's Apio and a Dongo. Apio, now that's a twin, it's a set. Yeah, so Apio is the first twin, so Apio is fast, right? Yeah, so I showed up fast. So it's the first with a FIRST.
Oh, you are the first to show up.
Yeah. Okay, guys. It's good to clarify.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm fast. How that has showed up in my life, I feel like I don't have to compete. Right? That's just the energy I kind of get about it. And I feel like when my time comes, it has arrived. So I'm not looking at, what is someone else doing? No. I'm just like, when my time comes, the same way when my time came and I came out fast.
You're okay with that position?
That was my time. Yeah. So when I look at how now my community and where I come from, there's an appreciation there, yeah, but there's also very disconnected. Like, we don't know the stories, we don't know the background. I think when we were growing up, we were the family that was told, you can't learn Luo, learn English, yeah, so our English is, everyone's English is really good, right? But Luo, we are that class 4, I can only hear, I can't speak.
We must organize for many funerals around that.
You get? So there's that disconnect, right? But then again, also as I grow older, you find yourself wanting to reclaim that, yeah, and wanting to learn your language, because it's so sweet. Like when you're around people from your community and you hear them, it's like a song in your ears, and you're dancing to the beat, but you're not understanding anything. Yeah, you're just there like, oh, wow. Sounds so good. Then the cultural aspects, some things we've carried on. Some of the Luo traditions and tribes and even the female politics, the woman politics, they're crazy, guys. Yeah.
Okay, I have time. What happened there?
No, we want to hear what Dikeledi.
What are the female politics in the naming there?
How everybody became named on the basis of a European patriarchal thought system. Yeah.
Okay.
So, for example, when a lot of men, of course, and women back then, so not all African women, of course, were named by their fathers' surnames or your husband's whatever, right? And even when you married, you never lost your identity in terms of your name, right? So you'd find, say, for example, and I like to make the example of the Zulus. So say, for instance, I'm a Zulu man and I marry you. And so, of course, my surname is Mokwena. In a sense, you become my wife, but I still refer to you by your maiden name. So you do not lose your maiden name. And of course, there's a lot of poetry as well that comes with, people would say it's actually ditakazelo, right? So, and this thing, even as we have it as well, right? So you tell, I'm Mukwena of this, et cetera, et cetera. And that is also then able to also help you locate where you actually come from, right? Like, for instance, I'm Mukwena wa Mhlakwana. So Mhlakwana is actually like one who comes from over there. So in a sense, you are, right? And of course, it doesn't end there. It's like a very long, it's like, when they say, they call it praise poetry, right? But it's actually not. It's like basically when people speak to you, especially the our older generations, when they know, and then, they're able to actually sort of help you remember your family tree by literally, and then of course others, you then think this, really like a poem, an entire poem has been recited just, naming me, but it's actually a reminder.
In the new liberties, we want to be mysterious.
In a sense. So I mean, there's a lot of, just to go back to you, right? I have a similar experience in terms of people, their reaction to my name. So my name, it's a Sesotho name. So Sotho Setswana, right? So you find it in Southern Africa, you find it in Botswana, you find it in South Africa, you find it in Lesotho as well. So it means Dikeledi. And of course, people are like, Dikeledi means Dikeledi. It means tears. Dikeledi means tears. And when people hear like, what is this? Why are you naming a child?
Why tears?
Yeah,
What
why
was going on?
tears?
What's the story?
Right? What are you trying to set? And it goes back to that idea of names are theoretical frameworks of our lives. They're setting a path in terms of where you want. But then it goes back to, so that's where the parents come in, or those who name actually then come in. They'll give you a context as to why a particular name was given. So I was named after my father's sister. She was still alive when I was named. So, but when she was born when her grandmother had just passed away. Yeah. So she was named Dikeledi, but so of course she was named in the context of sadness and loss. But when I was named after her, it was more of a prayer for my life to actually become as successful as her. Because as the firstborn in the family, she was the most successful, of course, like leading, showing a way for the females in the family as well. So there's more of a prayer that my father was making for my life. So in a sense, so it goes back to that thing, there's something in a name. So you just, it goes back to that, also this notion of the importance of teach people how to say your name. Say your name. Don't reduce your name. Don't, suddenly assume a different name just because a certain race of people cannot pronounce it. Yeah. And one thing I've learned when I arrived in East Africa was white people can say our names.
Very well.
Yes, they can.
Very well.
Because they also speak Kiswahili fluently.
Very well.
I'm like, what?
Speak to Nairobians who are saying Niaje. And then you meet a white person who tells you habari ya asubuhi. Even with that comfort, respectful spirit of, our ancestors, and that Swahili is ours.
Precisely. So it goes back to like, if you put the effort, of course, in South Africa, right, because of the black people, Africans were relatively inferiorized for a long time, and our government was, and of course, also you had settler colonialism, but I think what has been different is there has been an effort for whites to learn the language, whereas in South Africa it's been relatively the opposite. Like we've had to learn English or Afrikaans, of which in 1976 a lot of students protested. But anyway, so that is. So coming here, I was like, especially my first encounter of a white person speaking Kiswahili was in Arusha. And also about 2 weeks ago, I was in Dodoma. And so there were these Chinese guys at the restaurant and they were smoking. And of course, I was trying to ask them to stop smoking or something. And so I called the young Asian. So I'm like, hi. Can I speak to you? He's like, I don't know how to speak English. nijua Kiswahili.
Wow.
And I was like, what?
And here we are. Here we are.
Like, release yourself.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is then our excuse to be embracing English? And people are understanding that language is an economic instrument, especially in a country, because now it goes, so we learned English for economic reasons, yeah? But now, again, Africa is repositioned in a different, sort of, literally things are becoming different for Africa, right?
Who is the bestseller Swahili author we know? I mean, we will have to tell everybody, we're going to do the homework and come back to you. Because we don't. Like, the politics of language have really disadvantaged us.
True.
And also in our quest for our Africanness, we must go back to our languages.
Yes.
True.
And there is no inferiority in speaking your language. And that's not just Swahili, but even your ethnic language.
Yes.
You know the way you show up for Christmas and you're showing your brothers and sisters there that you speak better English. It's nothing.
As if it's a...
No.
Decolonize yourself, please.
Oh. Like, child,
Do the work.
get down from your high horse.
Precisely.
Yeah. So again, it's very, very important, because what we are finding in the new liberation, as you're calling it, or liberalism, is that people are finding it cool to go like, I can't speak Kiswahili. I was in an event the other day, and I speak Swahili. I speak it well because I respect the language, But people are like, but how? How do you speak Kiswahili like that? Me, I can't. And you're thinking that's something that we should glorify.
It should.
No.
I think even the Europeans themselves have no respect for anybody who opts to lose their identity, if that is what people want, to actually impress Europeans. But no one respects. I think anywhere in any context.
Like, what are you?
So show up as your authentic self, and that's when you realize people actually will begin to respect you and really learn to love you the way you are as well. And happy, again, you're depriving the world of diversity that it needs. That's what you're doing. Right? You are depriving it, because what language also brings, it's culture, it is history. Right? It also, of course, in it, you'll hear the values as well. Like, for instance, I'll give you, we have this proverb in my language. It says, "Bana ba motho ba kgaolelana, hlo ya tsiye." So loosely translated means children of the same, or siblings, share a locust's head. See how small a locust is?
Very tiny.
So what that is saying to, or as, what the elders were teaching, the language speakers of Sesotho, of which that particular proverb comes from, is that irrespective of how things are economically and financially, you are going to share. And now see, if basically we understood that and we have that inform our economic policies, right? Economics of redistribution, politics of redistribution, that no matter how a country is faring, no matter how problematic, the single-digit GDP or zero-digit GDP growth, But now when we go back to redistributing the wealth of the nation, we say, "Bana ba motho ba kgaolelana hloho ya tsiye," right? So you share a smaller thing and you redistribute it equally. It doesn't matter, right? So that is informing. So in the language, here we are with an economic theory, actually. We're able to distill an economic theory around how Africans actually were living and also how they're supposed to live, because it is actually sort of was directive. Bana ba motho ba, so it means you have to do it. You have to share, no matter how small the locust head is. You're supposed to share as siblings.
I think even for me, the light bulb moment I'm having is even as we're talking about identity in the quest for Afrocentricity, that there is diversity in the Afrocentricity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, and that if we were very much tied and we are embracing the sharing, we would be far. Like, I would have shared even my language with you.
Yeah.
You would have shared your language with me, and we wouldn't be talking about how we speak English better, but how I speak my Kisi, and I can also speak in Luo because they are my neighbors. And
Exactly,
I have a
literally, there are
sense
no
of pride.
boundaries,
And, we're even sharing in that.
And it creates community as well. I mean, if somebody is able to speak in your name, automatically dynamics become different. If somebody's able, I mean, look at that Asian guy, right? So he started speaking Kiswahili, and of course, how then you would interact with them, becomes slightly different. So it's easy to build friendship.
Yeah.
Right? It's relatively easy to build friendship because here's this person who made the effort to actually learn your language, right? Of course, they've learned it for economic reasons.
Of course.
But now it goes back to...
But at least they have.
But it also has a reminder as well that remember that language, including culture, are economic instruments.
Of course.
Because when you embrace your Afrocentricity, what that means is you are actually making an economic choice. Because being an Afrocentric means you live your life on a daily basis in an African way. And now when you bring in Pan-Africanism into the mix and you say, I'm an Afrocentric Pan-Africanist, right? So that means every single day of your life, when you wake up, the toothbrush that I brush my teeth with. The soap that I bought, was it made in Africa? Was it made by Africans? Wow. Because I'm a Pan-Africanist, I'm Afrocentric, I'm literally going to use this thing because, right, it is made by Africans. Yeah. It means now also what I wear. Yeah? What the clothes that I'm wearing.
You must stand. In Nairobi, we say, in Kenya, we say, unakuja sana.
They're from China.
No, but for real, so identity is very much economic, right? Sure. So if I'm an Afrocentric and I'm also Pan-Africanist, so I'm going to wear my African kitenge, yeah? And of course, with the hope that it's not made in China.
That's a topic of another day because we also know where it's made.
Exactly.
And it's not in Africa.
It's not in Africa.
But of course there are other countries that do make kitenge, right? So of course you become conscious of those things. So kitenge one is representative of my people, their history, their culture, their colorfulness, and of course, in many instances, even the so-called patterns on the kitenges have meanings, right? So you've made an economic instrument because you've decided to buy fabric made in Africa, right, or in any African country. You have supported a Black or African business. You have created jobs indirectly because that business has to hire people, right, who work there. And then, you're also paying taxes, right? Of course, that business pays taxes. The workers pay taxes. And now what that goes back to, it is the hospital that is going to be built by the government, unless it is corrupt and stealing money. It is the roads that are going to...
Hypothetically, it's not different. Let's go on.
Yes, right? Hypothetically, it's not stolen, but it's going to build the roads. It is going to build, so all of these things. It's an economy, an entire economy. So whenever we make decisions to say, okay, I am going to buy, because now I embrace Nike, Louis Vuitton, and that's my form of status. What you have done is you have deprived the continent of having jobs that are actually made here. You are depriving young people who are jobless in this continent, in this country, of a source of income. Because you have decided to actually send money outside as opposed to embracing your own African identity. So it's not just about identity. It's very much economic. It is very much about GDP. It is very much about everything other thing that we really take for granted.
Wow. Dikeledi, I have a question. Now, as a young person and you want to embrace your Africanness, right? And you want to begin that journey, where do you start?
Oof. So I think
listening to this podcast.
Or let me rephrase that. At what point in your journey did you begin, and what was that process for you?
I think it is the quest to know.
Okay.
The quest to know who I am, who I was, in relation to what Westernization was trying to frame me as. Yeah, especially because growing up in a context where there was apartheid and a relative racism that still continues. Yeah, somebody sees you and sees kafir nigga. Somebody sees you, automatically assumes that you're inferior. But then when you started reading about it, you're like, actually, my grandmother comes from royalty.
And you've been walking around life like a commoner.
Right? But even besides that, even if there's no royalty in a sense, but knowing who you are gives you a sense of peace about that. And of course, literature also helped, right? When you read literature that tells you about Black consciousness, that Black is beautiful. When the world is marketing skin bleaching materials, and soaps and products, and says being lighter skinned is better, it is more beautiful. But then when you know and begin to realize that all of that has been engineered, it has been engineered to make us hate ourselves, then you're like, no, man, Black is beautiful. In fact, melanin is like the source of richness. The more darker you are, the more chocolate and rich and amazing, right? So all of these things, of course, have been taken, and that for me, I was able to learn through literature, right? So you're reading Biko, you're reading Fanon, you're reading all of these people who've been showing and theorizing how we ended up being where we are today. Why is it that people think if you're lighter skinned, you're more beautiful? If you speak English, that you're more intelligent.
40 marks, guys.
Right? So all of these things, you realize that they have been engineered. And ultimately, where do they go back to? They go back to a foreign market that is not owned by Africans.
For me, I think what I'm taking away is that in the quest for this identity thing or identity element, it's important for us to be curious.
Yeah.
That's what I'm taking away. Because you shouldn't just take things at face value. You shouldn't just want to attach yourself to some cultures. Be curious, like, where is this going? Where did it even come from? How is it influencing the now? Yeah. Parting shot, guys, parting shot.
I'm going to go and then Dikeledi will close for us with your parting shot. For me, what I'm taking away is to add to just the curiosity as well. You have to start asking the questions and being intentional, right? You can't just be naming your kids Jaden because, or Beyonce.
Sounds cool. Sounds
you
cool.
know, it sounds cool, right? Like, be intentional. And I really like that theoretical framework aspect of naming that you brought out. And for me, it's actually just being intentional and going back to ask the questions and also being curious about myself, right? Being curious about me, where I come from. Don't just waddle in the world. Confused about who you are, because everyone else sees it. Everyone sees the confusion other than you. Yeah. Unfortunately, right? Over to you, Dikeledi.
I think it's essentially love. Let's love ourselves. When we love ourselves, then I think that trickles down in so many other aspects. It trickles down to how we treat each other. It trickles down to how we're going to treat our country. It trickles down to literally almost everything. And I think being African is the most amazing thing, right? Africa is rich in so many ways. I think, and you have more people who are bringing this up. Just because, there's the statistics are saying people are living on $2 a day, but there are people who actually are living in the abundance of land. People are living in abundance of so much richness and peace, right? Yeah. So it may not count in terms of GDP, but then it is value that many of us are actually trying to go back to today.
Even the quality of life.
Even the quality of life. So let's just love ourselves. Let's just love Africa. Learn from Africa to improve our continent for the better.
Wow. This was awesome.
Yes.
I wish we had more time, more days. Yeah. But we also know it's very African never to know when to stop sometimes, which is a good thing anyway. Yeah. So our wonderful viewers, young people, and everyone else was able to tune in. We hope you had a moment of, I don't know what to say. That moment is about, but jiheshimu nani. Start by respecting yourself in the quest of your Afrocentric, authentic identity. Until next time, that was our time from the Tangawizi Podcast.